Wow, thank you. So good morning, everybody. I'm Helen Bartram, and I'm here today. I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed and emotional. The thing is, I was just FaceTiming my little boy just out there before I came on, and bless him, normally I take him to school on a Friday, and he was saying, "Where are you, Mummy? Why aren't you taking me to school? I don't want to go in Granddad's car." And the thing is, when I decided to come here and share with you all today, I knew that I was going to miss out on the morning school run, and I thought I'd made the right decision. Well, I know I made the right decision, but the thing is, now I feel guilty for that. Guilt is a real issue among mums, and 90% of mums said they feel guilt towards their children. And in the same study by NUK, 21% said that they felt guilty most or all of the time. Let me share with you some common reasons on why mums often share that they feel guilty. So you've got some mums that feel guilty because they didn't breastfeed their babies long enough. And then you've got mums that feel guilty because they didn't breastfeed their babies at all. You've got the mums that feel guilty because they went back to work too soon. And then the mums that feel guilty because they don't work at all. You've got the mums that feel guilty because they let their child have pizza for breakfast once. And the mums that feel guilty because they've never let their child have pizza. Maybe you can start to see a bit of a pattern here. Maybe some of these sound familiar to you. Or perhaps you know another mum that's experienced something along the lines of this. My first experience of mum guilt occurred when my firstborn was about 20 minutes old. 20 minutes. And I'm there in the hospital side room, quite a small square room, with whitewashed walls and that clean clinical smell that hospitals have. I'm laid on the bed and I'm snuggling my little bundle here. And she'd arrived 6 weeks early, so she was quite a lot smaller than your average newborn. She had a full head of dark brown hair, the tiniest button nose, and she hadn't even opened her eyes yet, but I already knew she was the most precious thing I'd ever laid eyes on. And if you're a parent, whether you've given birth or not, maybe you can remember the first time you laid eyes on your child. In the far corner of the room, there was a doctor, and he had a very serious face, quite a large pointy nose, mousy brown hair, and he's one of those doctors, you know when you mentally question whether they're old enough to have gone all the way through medical school, because he looked about 12, and he appeared to be giving instructions. And as I handed my baby over to my husband, I noticed the midwife coming towards me. And at that moment, when I glanced up at her, I couldn't help but notice how much she reminded me of Velma from Scooby-Doo. You know, with the short bob, the fringe, really round glasses, and the only thing she was missing was that orange turtleneck jumper that Velma always wore. This midwife had been with me throughout the entire labour, and I was so grateful for that because her warm, kind, caring energy really helped me through the challenges. "Helen, we need to get your baby to the neonatal ward. We think you've got an infection, and that's probably what started the early labour. We need to take some bloods from you and the baby and pop a little cannula into her arm. Get started on some antibiotics just to be on the safe side." And bam, there it was, mum guilt kicked in. The thing I've given my baby an infection. It's my fault that she's arrived so early and now she's so fragile. How on earth are they going to get a needle into her tiny arm? This is all my fault. Now you might be thinking how irrational I was being and actually taking responsibility for something that I had very little control over. But that's often how guilt works. We lose the logic and we replace it with irrationality. How I view it is that there's 3 things that can really kickstart mum guilt, and I like to call them the 3 C's. And they are comparison, culture, and control. Let's have a little look at them. So number 1, comparison. We've all been guilty, and pardon the pun, of comparing ourselves to other people at some point. And it needs to stop. We need to stop wasting our energy comparing a glimpse into somebody's life because we never see the full picture, and start focusing on our own efforts and our own achievements. And number 2, culture. It's 2019 and women can do it all. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to dampen on anyone's fire. If you have ambition and drive and purpose outside of motherhood, know that I'm cheering you on. But if your ambition is to survive the day as a stay-at-home mum, then know that I'm cheering you on too. Number 3, control. And beware, this can often turn you into a zombie. Now, I mentioned the word zombie there, and you might be thinking I'm talking about the mums that have had very little sleep and not even managed to brush their hair. And I'm pretty sure I've resembled something somewhat of a zombie on morning school runs quite often. But I'm actually talking about something completely different. I'm talking about the mums that go into automatic control mode. The mums that use every last bit of energy trying to show up in the world as the most perfect and in control parent there ever was. They're scared that we will see their mum fails. But they're absolutely exhausted and not even enjoying the role because they're just trying so hard to control everything. I don't always get this stuff right, and quite often I find myself with a one-way ticket on a guilt trip. Here's my idea though. Let's start accepting mum guilt using the 3 P's. Persistence, perspective, and personality. So number 1, persistence. None of us decided when we were babies that we got up one day and we were going to walk. We started skirting around the furniture, getting a little feel for it, maybe taking a step and falling down. Maybe taking a few more steps and falling down again. And even as adults, sometimes we physically fall down. But do we give up trying to walk because we fall? No, because persistence is key. When we accept that we're constantly learning and constantly growing, it makes it much easier to feel less guilty. And not only are we leading our children to know that giving up is not an option, we're showing them that we're human and humans are flawed. Number 2, perspective. Wayne Dyer said, change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. Change the way you look at things and the things you look at change. Now, guilt is often associated as a negative emotion or experience. And you might be thinking, how on earth can we switch that up? Well, I like to change guilt into gratitude. Let me tell you how. Have you ever had a time when you've been cooking in the oven and when you open the door, a big puff of smoke comes out? And all of a sudden, beep, 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 the smoke alarm goes off. And if you're like me, I grab the nearest tea towel and I start wafting it to calm it down. And the food's not even burnt, it's maybe just been a little bit dramatic. But I understand it's doing its job. It's just alerting me that something's not quite right, something's not as it normally is. Maybe there's a potential danger, but actually the food's fine and I just carry on letting it cook. Well, that's how guilt works for me. Maybe you're going out one night with some friends and it's probably your first night out all year and the kids are tucked up in bed and you're just about to leave the house and all of a sudden, beep, 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 your internal guilt alarm starts sounding. Next time that happens, thank the guilt alarm for showing up, alerting you that something's not quite right, it's not as it normally is. We're normally tucked up in bed in our pajamas, and actually just waff it with your tea towel and go off and enjoy your night. We don't take the food out the oven and throw it in the bin because the smoke alarm got a bit dramatic. So let's not ruin a good night out. And then number 3, personality. Don't be afraid to bring your personality to motherhood. Don't be afraid to show your children your more playful side. Don't be scared to show your children your funny side. And don't be scared to show your children your vulnerable side. I remember once dancing around the kitchen to some cheesy tunes, and my daughter walked in, and her jaw hit the floor. And for a split second, I thought she was mortified, until she started singing and dancing and joining in, laughing with me. And then it dawned on me. It's probably the first time in a long while that she'd seen me loosen up, like really loosen up. We often get weighed down by the role of motherhood and by the other roles that we play in our lives. But actually, when we bring our personality to the roles, we get to embrace who we really are. We don't resent not getting time for ourselves as much, because resentment then often leads to guilt. Let me leave you with one last thing. Let's start letting go of the 3 C's: control, comparison, and culture, and start moving towards the 3 C's: persistence, perspective, and personality. My first experience of mum guilt was when my firstborn was 20 minutes old. And my latest experience of mum guilt was about 20 minutes ago. I don't believe this is something that's ever going to go away, but let's start letting go of the 3 C's and moving towards the 3 P's. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention here today. I am eternally grateful. Thank you.